Coaches in the Mouth pod. This is Coach Jeff Williams. Coach Bray Cook is out in Vegas right now. Looks like he's working on his golf game. Coach, we got a special guest, an NBA coaching legend, a college coaching legend, guys coach LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, University of Arkansas, also Coach Clay Moser. Coach, welcome to the show. We're ready to break down the NCAA tournament time, and we're ready to break this thing down. But first of all, let's talk about that background you got back there. So, young Clay Moser with Coach Valvano, and tell us about that.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And then the way, and Jeff and I were just talking about this, Ray, this is a really cool video or picture of mine. I'm not a big picture guy. Like, I don't have a lot of pictures of myself. Like, all the guys I've been around, I've never tracked them down for. Like, it's just, I can't do it. I've never asked a player of mine for an autograph. Like, I can't do that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I have no idea who took this, but I got to get out of the way. And then you'll see Coach Valvano there walking. It's to my right, to the screen's left. Mm-hmm. The gentleman to my immediate right, the screen's left, was the best man in my wife Angie and I's wedding. Okay. And I was telling, of course, I'd have been 25 at that point, Jeff. I told you 24, but I had turned 25. So I was 25 years old at that part of my career, sitting on the front of an AHD bench. So.
Wow, what a picture.
That's some history.
If you look close, there might be some urine trickling down my trousers there. The first Division I game I ever saw in person, because I played in college, but I was just a small college guy. The first Division I game I ever saw in person, I coached in.
Wow.
Right, yeah.
That was pretty wild.
It took me a while to catch up to the speed of it all.
Well, no doubt.
Yeah, it was cool though. It was a fun time in my life, man. I had no idea what I was doing, and I have absolutely no idea why he took a chance on me, but forever grateful that he did, because it kind of set things on a path for me. And if he would have not passed away, I don't know where the heck all of us would be, but I'd probably be somewhere other than I am. I know that.
Well, I mean, what a legend. Just went to the Basketball Hall of Fame this past year, and that whole deal.
Last winter, yep.
Man, what a member! Everybody, there's not we'll see that frame of Winnington missing the shot and them going up and making the dunk. We were just talking off there. I'll never forget as a kid them doing that in '83. Of course, the Houston Cougars with Clyde Drexler, Keem Olajuwon, all those guys. They were known as the Five Slam and Jamma. They throw it up there, and I remember Keem Olajuwon just sitting there, and the guy catches it and dunks it.
He was just looking up at it, right?
Yeah. And I said, my gosh, the Five Slam and Jamma just lost the national championship on a dunk. How ironic is that?
Yeah.
Well, Coach, let's get into this. I mean, you've been talking all year long. Been getting prepared for this, and there's nobody else I'd want to have on to go through this tournament. Listen to a lot of guys out there is this in when you got the bracket, which, it's kind of got a little crazy there a little bit at the end, especially with the conference tournament blowouts and upsets here and there.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, you hear UConn. I've talked to some people about, North Carolina, I know the Arkansas's played Purdue and North Carolina and Duke. Talking to just a couple of players, they felt like North Carolina was the best team they played all year. Do you see tons of upsets, which you never can predict, or is UConn and some of the, the number one seeds pretty clear cut?
Well, yeah, I think I tweeted something out in November, Jeff, when I watched UConn play, and I watch a lot of games on TV. I've seen, numerous games in person as well, but I thought at that time that UConn was the best team in the country. I still believe that. They just have this look about them. They've got they play both sides of the ball. They're not one dimensional. They defend. They run great offense. They've got skilled players. They've got size. They've got toughness. They've got grit. I think their coach is elite, and I think they've got the whole package. And they had one misstep, and I'm trying to think who it was. But they had brought Marquette into town, I think, when they were 1 and Marquette was 4, and just absolutely clobbered them. And I think they went to Creighton and got beat really bad.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been their only misstep, for 4 months. and I think they're healthy and ready to go. So I believe for the whole season that UConn was the best team in the country, even when Houston took over the number one spot for a while. Although I've been also telling people for about a month now that I was hoping, which the committee did, they would put Houston and UConn in opposite sides, because I think that if they both get there, which certainly they both can, and certainly they both, something crazy could happen and neither one of them get there. But if they get there, that would more than likely be one of the greatest championship games we've ever seen.
Well, hopefully so, and we'll see, because this thing's just last year's crazy. The different seeds. I mean, you've been a part of it. You've the Elite Eights and final the whole thing. I mean, you've seen it. And you never know, because one bad dog, not shooting, or you're not on your A game defensively, you're going home. Well, Coach, let's do this. Let's start over there. Let's start with UConn over there in the East.
Okay.
You just kind of ran through these, the ones for 100% sure you feel good about it. And we'll break it down a little bit.
Listen, Coach, I appreciate your words, but generally my bracket is busted by the end of the first day, so I wouldn't take too much stock in any of this. I think there will be some upsets early, but I'm also a believer that by and large, as you get further down the road, the cream just kind of rises to the top. Now, I know it didn't a year ago. I think both FAU and San Diego State were both 5 seeds, which is highly unusual for that to happen. I heard on the selection show the other day, they were talking about the aggregate number they were putting on the seeds from a year ago was 23.
Yeah.
And I don't, that's crazy unusual. So I think there will be upsets along the way, because there just always are. They're unavoidable, and I've got some in my bracket. But at the end of it, I just think the best teams are going to find a way to get through there. And it's got to be. Listen, you got to stay healthy. You got to get a good whistle. You've got to have some luck somewhere along the line. And I'll just throw out a couple things, and you probably saw this too, but. Did you see how Akron got in the tournament?
No, I did not.
So Akron was down 1 with about 4 seconds to go, and I feel terrible for this kid, but Akron was down. Kent State misses a shot, but they get a putback to go up 1, and a kid clearly thought they had a foul to give, and they foul.
Yeah.
As the kid's racing up the floor, they don't do that, and Kent State's probably there.
Yeah.
As opposed to Akron. So just crazy things just happen. It's just that's all there is to it.
It does. Well, let's start off in this East bracket here. We got UConn, Stetson. I mean, you feel really good, obviously, about UConn, and I mean, you're crazy if you don't. This next one's kind of interesting to me. The Florida Atlantic Northwestern. I mean, Northwestern's in the Big Ten and up and down a little bit. Had a great year. Florida Atlantic's proven they belong. And what are you seeing there?
I think I have Florida Atlantic. I've got them advancing, and here's why: is that they stumbled a little bit in their league, and the best team in their league from a regular season standpoint never got out, and that was South Florida, and I just get this feeling, and I know Dusty May at Florida Atlantic is a great coach, great guy. But I just get this feeling that Florida Atlantic may have taken like a big sigh of relief that they got in, and they got a decent seed. It could have been a lot worse, because they had some tough losses. And if I remember correctly, they only got 2 teams in the tournament. And that was UAB, who won their tournament, their automatic bid, and then FAU. At one time, I thought Memphis might get in. I thought South Florida might get in. I thought they might get 3 or 4 teams in. So I think FAU might just kind of be. It's kind of like they've gotten a lease on life, if you want to put it that way. So I think they come out of that, and then I've got San Diego State winning the next one over UAB in the 5-12, which is a kind of that's a popular pick and upset, and I have a couple down the road, but I don't with them. I fell in love with the Mountain West Conference this year. And I was even tweeting out stuff, Jeff, that I thought they might get 5, if not 6 teams in. They got 6 in. And every night I'd watch a game. It was an absolute I mean, it was a bloodbath out there. And UNLV didn't get in, and UNLV is a good basketball team.
Very good team.
So, I think the wars that they've gone through out there, that San Diego State will get through that. I think Auburn is terrific. I think Auburn is Final Four worthy. I think they got a bad, bad draw being there with Connecticut. And then the other thing I was going to share with everybody. I was just doing some work on this morning because you challenged me, so I did some work on this. So Auburn goes to Spokane, and then if they get through to the Sweet 16, they go to Boston.
Jeez.
And if they would happen to get through, then they'd have to go to Phoenix. So that's one.
Coach, let me ask you something here. You've been through that, where with Arkansas, they were in Buffalo 1 week, and then next week you're going to San Francisco. People flying across country takes a lot out of you, and getting home. How do you deal with that a little bit?
Well, if you're smart, the first thing that you need is a sleep expert in your group, and I'm not being facetious about that. It's not a joke. Like, you need to have a sleep expert that tells you when you should fly, when you should be eating, all of these kinds of things, and so you should have a sleep expert. But if Auburn was to get there, so they're in the Central Time Zone, right?
Yep.
On their way out there, I don't know if Spokane's in the Mountain or the Pacific, but I think they're in the Pacific.
They'd have to be. Yeah. So
that would put them, although they're on the extreme eastern side of Washington. But let's say for the sake of conversation, so they're going to go 2 time zones out there, and then I don't know what they would do. They'd probably stop back home if they advanced, but then they're going all the way to the Eastern Time Zone. And then if they were able to get to the Final Four, now you're in whatever, Arizona doesn't change their times like everybody else does. So I never know but they can be either Pacific or Mountain, depending on the time of the year, or whether it's daylight savings or whatever. But that is a kind of for Auburn, I think that's a tough thing to have to go through. Because if you look at Connecticut, like Connecticut goes to Brooklyn, which is basically right down the street from them. And then they go to Boston, and then they'd have to go out west like everybody else would. But they basically have like a home court advantage all the way through to the Final Four, because their fans will get there. They'll get to New York because the Big East tournaments in New York, they're used to making that trek, and they've got great fans. But Auburn's Auburn, that's a tough go for Auburn, I think. And I just don't think at the end of the day, as good as I think they are, and I think they're really, really good, they just don't get past UConn. And then I've got Illinois. I've got BYU winning that next one. And
Coach, they've been a surprise. One of your former players, Jackson Robinson's on that team, and it's had a great year. And the BYU is just really, went to Kansas and beat Kansas and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, well, I love Jackson Robinson. I thought he should have been getting some time for us. He's an elite shooter. I think he's going to get drafted, Jeff.
Yeah, sort of.
And 2 years ago, he wasn't playing at all. So, it's a situation where he just kind of finally found a home and someone that could utilize his skills. And he was coming off the bench. And I said that early in the year that I thought he was going to be a 6th man of the year candidate, not only in their league, but nationally. He was a 6th man of the year in the Big 12. And then somebody must have gotten hurt for them, and he was starting for a while. And then when that kid went back, he went back in that 6th man role. And I think that suits him perfectly, because in the NBA, if he's fortunate enough to get there, and you and I have had this conversation because we had this conversation with Jalen. A lot of what these young players understand is, and part of why they need somebody that's been there to tell them and to help them with a lot of things, is getting there and staying there are 2 completely different functions. Yeah. And I think what will keep Jackson staying there is that he will already be accustomed to the 6th man, coming off the bench role, because I think that's what he's best suited for. And I hope the heck it works out for him, because he's the nicest kid on earth, and man, can he shoot it? I mean, holy cow, and he's huge. He's a legit 6'8", long, quick release, all that kind of stuff. So I see BYU getting past Duquesne, and then I've got Illinois beating Morehead State, and then I'm actually going to take Drake over Washington State.
Wow.
And I'm doing it for a couple reasons. Number one, Washington State was like, they were kind of they were, late mid-February, they looked like they were the darlings of the country at one point, and then they kind of stumbled toward the end. I think they lost 3 of their last 4. Still phenomenal year compared to what Washington State's been doing. But here's mostly why I'm doing it, Jeff, is that I can't imagine how fun it would be for Drake. First of all, Omaha is about 2 hours from Des Moines. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of Drake fans there.
Yes, sir.
Iowa State's also going to play there. And so Iowa State will basically drive right past Drake to get to Omaha. So they're about, they're a few miles up the road, but they might be racing their buses over there. And then if Drake and Iowa State could play in Omaha, 2 Iowa teams that are their campuses are 40 miles apart, that place would be crazy. So I'm going with Iowa State and Drake to win that first round, because I think that would be crazy. Like, that would be a crazy cool college environment to have 2 teams from the same state right up the street from each other playing in the NCAA tournament in the second round. And I think Iowa State's also really, really good. So they win that next round.
Well, let's go down, Coach. Let's go down the West, and we got North Carolina as a 1 seed there. Obviously, Arizona's a 2. And,
yeah,
I mean, there's some funny ones in here because with Michigan State, Mississippi State, and all that, and we'll get into it. Obviously, you probably like North Carolina here at the first round. Obviously,
well, yeah, this happens to them a lot. It seems like every time that Charlotte is hosting, that Carolina gets to play there. Which is, it's just down the street for them. They don't have to get on a plane. They don't change it. They don't change a time zone. And having coached in that state and coached in that league, I'll also tell you that Charlotte is a Carolina town.
Yeah.
So Charlotte's not an NC State town. Charlotte's not a Duke town. They are organically a Carolina town. So that'll be a decided home court advantage for them, particularly in the first round. I've got Howard, and those games must be started right now. Aren't the playing games started?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got Howard winning that, and then they'll get trounced, I think, by Carolina. And I think they'll come out having missed the tournament a year ago, and I think they'll try to make a statement early, jump on them, get it over with, and then sit guys so they can get them a little rest and get some other people in the game in case they need them down the road. I think that's going to be a blowout. I think Mississippi State beats Michigan State. Michigan State's just been kind of fumbling around all year. They'd win a couple and then they'd lose one that you wouldn't think they're going to lose, and it looked like they're going to get it going, and they just kind of haven't. Although I love Coach Izzo, I think this is their 29th straight year they've gone, and you just have to applaud them for that, because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. 29 straight years. Right.
Well,
but
Coach, a lot of people were upset that Michigan State got in. I mean, I heard, you listen to the guys on, the experts supposedly, whatever, and they were kind of a little upset. But a lot of times that tradition part of, they've been there and when they weren't supposed to be in there.
It plays a factor. Although, you know what, I've never understood this about the seating process and the committee and what they do. And so if some people think they should have been out, let's say for the moment, maybe they should have been out, but they get in, then why aren't they a 15 or 16 seed? Like, if they're so close to being out, how are they a 9?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. That's never made sense to me.
Well, I have to get Dave Warlock, the guy with the NCAA, get him on here. We'll get the bottom of that, because I've always wanted to know the same thing. The last 4 in, and they're plugging them here or there, and where they fit.
Right, where they fit. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do it. Put me on that one too.
I sure will. I'll get him on here. I'll get him on there. We'll ask him some tough questions.
No doubt.
St. Mary's and Grand Canyon.
I think St. Mary's beats Grand Canyon. They've got the player of the year in that league. It's Sharunas Marshalonis' son, and he's a lefty just like his dad was. He's not, his dad was built like you probably know this. Like, he was built like an NFL, he's built like Jim Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, strong, big, about 6'3", 6'4", about 220. And he was just like, not, people would just shred off of him when he ran into him. His kid hasn't grown into that kind of a body yet, but they have similar games. And then they've got a kid by the name of Aiden Mahoney that's really good. And I just don't think they'll be, they're not going to be afraid. St. Mary's. They've been there a lot. And not the Grand Canyon's going to be afraid either. And, Bryce has had teams there. He was a heck of a player himself and made one of the iconic plays in all of NCAA history. I just think St. Mary's takes care of that. Alabama beats Charleston, I think, handily.
Let me ask you something about Alabama real quick.
Yes, sir.
They worry me. I watched them play Arkansas a couple of weeks ago, and they end up winning in overtime. They've kind of been up and down. They don't look like and you know more about it than I do. The pieces that they've had the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I think what's going to happen with them is I have them winning this game simply not simply, but based on the talent discrepancy will be enormous.
Right.
And then I've got them beating St. Mary's as well. And then they're going to run into Carolina if they get that far. And they just, and Coach Oates has said this, like they just don't defend.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this game, as is like in your game too, like you got to stop the other team.
Yeah.
And you can't, defense has got to travel, game planning's got to travel, and you just can't count on the ball going in and getting every bounce every night. So at some point you gotta lock in and lock some people down, finish it with a board, get out in transition, get yourself some points that way. But at the end of the day, and there's, you hate to bring up that other team in the SEC, but there's two of them that don't guard very well.
Yeah.
And they're both great offensively, but man, they do not defend at all. And it's crazy to me because they've got great athletes. So I do see them getting to the Sweet 16. I don't see them getting further. And then I have New Mexico beating Clemson.
Hey.
Clemson kind of limped their way in, and New Mexico did not. Like New Mexico had some great wins down the road. And again, they played in that rough and tumble league out there. And I don't sleep very well, Jeff. So I was watching the Mountain West till midnight, 1 o'clock all the time. But I think New Mexico is really good. I think all those teams from the Mountain West are really good. And so I think New Mexico gets that one. Baylor gets Colgate handily. And then I've got Nevada beating Dayton in the 10-7 game for the exact same reasons I have New Mexico beating Clemson. And I just think they're seasoned. They are like, and not that Dayton's excellent, but this might be like a night off for these teams in the Mountain West in terms of the physicality, because there's some physical dudes in that league. And they officiated more SEC style than they did, for instance, like Pac-12 style. Like they let guys knock each other around a little bit, and that will usually, that physicality usually will pay off. And then I've got Arizona in the last game on that side of the bracket. But what I'm hoping is that during the course of the game, that Long Beach State's going to announce that they're going to bring Dan Munson back.
I hope so. What a nightmare. Good.
I don't understand. Like it's, some athletic directors, and I don't even care if you're listening, and you'll never probably hire me, but I mean, we're watching coaches get fired between the locker room and the post-game press conference podium, and you're firing a dude early in a week before you've even played your conference tournament. And Jeff, and I don't even know who the person is, but from a humanistic standpoint that AD is probably privately hoping they don't win that tournament.
Yeah.
Because now that person's like, they're in the crosshairs, right? Now they're like, now you got to answer some questions, Mrs. or Mr. AD. I don't know if it's a man or woman, who it is. It doesn't matter. Like, why would you do that?
But
you just put yourself in that, like you put yourself in that position.
Yeah, they did that. And then, of course, what was really cool to me is the team rallying around the kids, rallying around the coach. Yeah. And, that guy's had a lot of success and this and that. And of course, we're coaches and we're going to be protective. But, what a PR nightmare for the athletic director, not the basketball coach.
Right. Well, Dan Munson was the head coach of the Minnesota Gophers at one time, which that's my home state. And he was also the head coach at Gonzaga at one point, and so was his dad.
Wow.
So he's a coaching legacy guy. He's a good guy. And the other thing to me that's a complete joke. And again, I hope the person from Long Beach State is on there right now. Listen to this. The other thing is that it was a mutual parting of the ways. Did you see Dan Munson's his on court talking to the media?
Yeah.
He said, I love to coach. I love these kids. I'm not done.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound mutual to me.
I don't think it was mutual. And I love that he used the Jim Harbaugh, and who's got it better than us? Nobody. You gotta love it, man.
No doubt.
Well, Coach,
and as you know, coaches are savvy and they're wily. So that was a phenomenal interview by him. Like that was like interviewing for a job.
Yeah.
He's no dummy.
No. Well, if he's gonna land somewhere, and I bet the Long Beach AD ends up landing somewhere else too after this debacle. It works. Well, Coach, you like here? You got
G-rated, or can we tell where that is?
We got the ability to edit. We got the ability to, as long as Mom doesn't get on to us, she gets on to me every now and then about my language on here every now and then. But other than that, we're good. Well, Coach, who you like out here with Arizona coming out of this little pod here?
Yeah, I've got Arizona going 2 rounds, and then I have Baylor beating them going to go to the Elite Eight.
Okay.
And for no other reason than what was my son was telling me the other day that the Pac-12, which I'm still confused about.
Yeah.
Pac-12 exists, they don't exist. That just breaks my heart, that whole league. But the Pac-12 has not won a national championship since 1997, according to my assistant GM Carter Moser, who you know.
Yes, I believe that's right, and I'm going to say it was Arizona, and then
Arizona.
They won it. UCLA won it in '95. They beat the Arkansas Razorbacks in the finals that year with great Ed O'Bannon, the O'Bannon brothers, and
right.
Lord, that name's went on. NILs, we're having NIL now. They were the first ones in on it,
No doubt. And EA Sports, man, that wanted the money. So in my former boss, Luke Walton, played on that '97 team in Arizona.
Sure did.
And when he was the head coach of the Lakers and I was on that staff, and I hope these guys aren't listening right now, but I had to suffer a lot of Arizona dudes on the staff. Like there's too many of them, like way too many. And Jesus, like every day, like God. Let's talk about something other than let's talk about the Celtics. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Arizona Wildcats and Lute Olson. They're good. They're good guys, but 97. So I'm not getting Arizona past that for no other reason than they're not able to get it done. And the Big Ten's the same way. I think the Big Ten hasn't had one since 2002 or something like that. And I think that was Izzo.
Yeah, it was Michigan State with Cleaves. They had the point guard that year.
Mateen Cleaves. Yeah.
Sure.
So when you start talking about something not happening for a couple decades. Yeah, that's no longer a mystery. Like that's a theme.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, but I think they do get the Sweet 16, and I've got Baylor beating them because I think the Big 12 was obviously phenomenal.
Yeah,
but they kind of just clobbered the crap out of each other all year too. So like when you pick up the standings, almost everybody was between 2 games above 500 and 2 games below 500 for the most part, and like a couple outliers at the top and a couple at the bottom, but the rest of them are just lumped up there. Just crazy.
Well, they have, and that league's been like that. I mean, Oklahoma's a great example. They've been on the border there for the last couple of years. I thought they had a really good basketball team, and just losing a game here or there gets you in trouble. Well,
let me flip the script on you, Jeff, and ask you, like, what do you feel about these teams that didn't play in the NIT, that didn't get NCAA bids? Well,
here's my deal on that is, and I've seen it work both ways. I think it depends on your situation, but at the end of the day of it is, if I'm a player and I put myself in a player's shoes and I can go play one more game, I want to go play.
Yep.
And that's what the thing's about. It's about giving you an opportunity to play, opportunity to showcase. And Coach, you know how this is. And I remember, I think I missed the playoffs maybe twice in my career. And one year we missed the playoffs, but we won our last game, and it was a rival game. and it really spurred us on for the next year, went on to
Sure.
for state championship. I think it's the same thing, and you've probably seen it too in the NIT. You go in there and you get the rhythm and win that thing or make a long run. And I know rosters change every year, but you still got a few more on there. Say you got a team that's not been in the NCAA, they
Right.
make a run, they're better prepared for the next year. Plus, it gives you momentum. People, the same thing with bowl games. Well, these meaningful bowl games. Well, somebody plays in that Independence Bowl or that Liberty Bowl, it's a big deal to those guys, those
Right.
coaches and players. And I think it's kind of arrogance a little bit just on my part. Now, I don't know everybody's situation, but I think if you get an opportunity to go play, you go play.
I agree. And I was talking to Brian Hodgson yesterday about some other things with my consulting business that I can't divulge. But we got talking about his team, and I'm going to look this up here. So they have opted into the college basketball invitational, and then we had that exact same conversation. Like,
Yeah.
Arkansas State hasn't been in the postseason since 1999, so it's been 25 years, and it's an opportunity. And he believes he's going to get most of his guys back, which is great because they've had a good experience. They've been better than they have. Everything's on the uptick. Well, why not just perpetuate that whole process?
Yeah.
Get those kids some more experience. There's really no pressure anymore. So maybe you play a couple kids that didn't get to play so much because they need some seasoning, and you need them come next November, and you're going to need them in February and March 25. So I don't see a lot of downside to it either. And I wish that, even Rick Pitino gave a weird explanation as to why they weren't playing. And as somebody else said, it's like for the benefit of our student athletes. And I'd like to hear what the student athletes had to say.
Yeah, I'm not buying in on that. Well, it's just coaching. I use football. That's my background. And I hear the college coaches say this all the time, and it's true. And even in high school, if you make a long run in the playoffs or you got a bowl game, that's extra spring practice. You're developing your young guys.
Absolutely.
Doing the same thing in NIT, you're getting 10 extra practices or so if you go on where you're developing those guys. And for players, coaches involved in it, I think you just always go play. Now, I'm a competitive spirit guy. I think if sign me up where we need to go play in the street, I'll go play in the street, but just give them an opportunity.
I agree.
Well, Coach, let's head over to the South. Obviously, Houston's they started off real well, had a blowout there in the conference tournament, which let me ask you this about that.
Yes, sir.
And you've been a part of, obviously, you're as a competitor, you're going in these conference tournaments, and you've been a part of this where you're already in, you might can improve your seed, you might not. Is rest more important or is winning more important? I mean, if you win a game or two, you're going home early, getting rest, you're okay with that? Or is it just the way you played or finished it? I mean, what, as a coach, going those conference tournaments, knowing that you're in, not the ones that trying to fight their way, but you're in, what's the mindset going into that deal?
Well, I think there's a couple factors, and I'm going to bring one up right now because I was thinking about them today, and I was thinking about an experience. It was actually the year of the COVID tournament.
Yeah,
and we were sitting. They had taken us because we had been in. Where were we? Were we in Nashville? I think we were in Nashville because we bust up to Indianapolis and then just sat there until we had the selection show. It was so weird. But Illinois had won the conference tournament that year, and then we watched Iowa win it the year after. We were actually at the watch party in the like on the end of the football stadium at Arkansas when Iowa won theirs. But the Big Ten they have their championship game is the last big conference game in the circuit, right? Everybody else is done. In fact, some of them end on Saturday, which I think is smart. But Illinois was the last game done. We're sitting there watching them, and now we're in the Eastern time zone, right? So it's even an hour later. Iowa did, and now it's happened again. And here's where I'm going with this, Jeff. Is they're the last big conference tournament game. Illinois wins it, and they play on Thursday.
Wow.
Now, if they were playing on Friday, so I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to answer it in two different ways.
Yeah.
If they were playing on Friday, I don't think it matters. But they played Sunday, and now they got to play again on Thursday. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened to them the last time when they didn't get out of there. And the same thing happened to Iowa because it's an emotional time. You want to win it. You're a competitive group of people. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the dang room together to begin with. But, and there'll probably be people listening go, well, geez, that's like 4 days. Well, yeah, it is 4 days, except for they've been going at it since the summer. They've been all over the place. There are bumps and bruises and tears and stitches, and that. Like it's like that could be a time that you're using to heal. So that extra day would be huge. And where did I write down here? So Illinois is going to Omaha, which isn't a big deal, but then they would turn around and go to Boston if they were to advance.
Wow.
And now they're going, they're going west by, it's probably an hour and a half flight. And then you'd survive that melee, and then you'd turn around and go what's probably going to be a 3-hour flight out to Boston and lose a time. You're going to lose an hour. So that stuff all adds up. And you have to be aware of like you need a sleep expert. Your nutritionist needs to be like on top of their game. Your strength and conditioning people need to be on top of their game, and your medical staff needs to be on top of their game. In addition to the players and the coaches, like everybody's got to be on the top of their game. Everybody.
Well, and that that's you see that the early exit sometimes good, get the extra rest, blah blah blah. And obviously, back when you're sitting there coaching in that deal, especially when the back in the day when it was 32 teams in the conference bid, there's so much pressure on that conference tournament, and there's not much now going into it. But you want to stay healthy, obviously.
Yeah.
And then move on.
And you want to win.
That's what we do. That's what players do. And everything. Well, let's head over to the South here. Obviously, I believe we've already talked about you're going to like Houston in this first game here in Memphis, which should be they bring. Memphis loves basketball, and too bad the University of Memphis didn't get in there, but there'll be huge crowds there. All right, this is the one that's really interesting to me: Nebraska and A&M. I can't. A&M, I've turned them on, buddy, and I think, man, they figured it out, and then I'll turn them on, and they hadn't figured it out. And Nebraska's been pretty consistent. You know more about this than I do. Talk to us about this one.
Well, I'll just cover Houston quick. Because I wanted UConn Houston. I've got Houston going all the way to the finals, so I'm expecting that, and I kind of hope it happens in a way. But I also was born in Nebraska, Jeff. All my ancestors are. They're buried there, and we lived there till I was 5. And then I would go back and stay with my dad in the summers, and we just had a family reunion in Nebraska. So I've got a place in my heart for Nebraska, obviously. And I've been saying all year that Fred would get them in and they'd win a game. So I got to live by that now. And that's my scientific reason for it. But I'm with you with Texas A&M that, and here's going to, I'll preempt or I'll preview what I'm going to talk about a little later when we get to Kentucky. But Texas A&M, in my mind, is scoring challenged, and they've scored. Their high for the year was they scored 97 twice, and they both happen to be against Kentucky. So Kentucky can't guard. So now I can't quite figure out if Texas A&M got the offense right, or if they were just playing against a horrible defensive team. But they have gotten they've made some strides offensively late here in the season. Wade Taylor can go nuts, like he did against the Razorbacks in that first game at home, and was almost enough to do it for him. But at the same time, Terrence Radford gave him nothing. Yeah. So Wade Taylor is the Batman, but Radford's got to be a really good Robin. But I'm in my heart, I'm hoping, because Nebraska is the only Power 5 school that's never won an NCAA tournament game.
Did not know that.
Yeah, so Nebraska needs to win a game to get that off there, to get that monkey off the back. And Fred also has a lake home in the same community I do in Minnesota, so we get together for a couple beers here and there out on the nice little fresh water, catch a walleye here or whatever. So And Fred's a good dude. Buzz has become a better and better friend. I've known him for like long time, but I think Nebraska's going to win that. And Nebraska's got an electric kid that they got out of Japan who's fun to watch, and he will match Wade Taylor, shot for shot. And then I think they're more, and both teams are physical. I think Texas A&M is a little more physical, so it'll boil down a lot to how the game's going to be officiated. Texas A&M is a great offensive rebounding team, and I'm not that smart, Jeff, but I love to have a great offensive rebounding team, but I just think it's better if that first one just goes in the first place. How about we just put it in there and then
don't worry about it.
let's take the mystery out of this. So that's I might be the dumb guy on the call, but I say I just like that first one. Just go ahead and go in.
Yeah, it'll be a lot easier on everybody.
It'll be a lot easier.
Well, Coach, here we go. Wisconsin. We're heading to Brooklyn again. Wisconsin, James Madison.
So Wisconsin has finished the season on a major uptick. They look like they were dead in the water there for a while, and I have them going. I've got them winning 2 games and getting to play Houston in the Sweet 16. I think that's where their season will end. But I think they win 2. They have really finished the season on an uptick, and that means they beat Duke in the second round.
Yeah.
Duke I can't quite trust.
So you like Duke over Vermont? Vermont, you're at Arkansas, played against those guys in the tournament, I believe, and they're kind of awkward. I hadn't seen them. Big guys shooting threes, kind of unorthodox, same style.
Well, yeah, they've got they play a style you don't see necessarily at the Power 5 levels. They have, like, for instance, the kid Robbie Avila that plays at Indiana State. They call him the baby Jokic. So Vermont's got a kid like that. So the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12 bigs, they're not used to guarding a dude like that. So that does give you a little trouble. But game planning is a factor. But I got to tell you something else too, Jeff, that I hope you're listening audience will find kind of interesting. So last night, my family and I were at the Cal State University San Bernardino basketball game here in LA. Gus Arginal's team advanced to the Elite 8. And one of the kids on his basketball team at Cal State University San Bernardino was on the roster at Vermont when we played them in Buffalo.
Wow.
How small of a world is that?
That is. Was it the big guy or?
No, it was one of the guards, because Gus and I were talking about that. We just flew in yesterday, and we had we got some rental car problems and classic LA traffic. So we didn't get there early enough to talk to Gus. But after the game, I was looking at everybody's obviously they're smaller. And I told Gus, I said, what you don't get at the D2 level, while they're terrific players, because you got to be good to play beyond high school, no matter where you play. You know that. You've had kids that have played at all levels, but you got to be good to play beyond high school. And I said, it's interesting watching, and I hadn't seen a Division II game for a long time. And I said, they don't, like, your guys don't necessarily have the lateral quickness, and they don't necessarily have the vertical play that they do at the big time levels, but they are strong. Like, these dudes are strong, like physically strong. Like, their athleticism is based in their strength, which is people discount that as athleticism. Like, if you're strong, that means that's an attribute. So I was pointing, and he had 3 of them. And I was pointing at the one kid. I said, this kid right here, he's strong as an ox. He goes, yeah, he was at Vermont when we played him.
Wow.
I looked at him and go, you're right. So what a small world thing that is, right?
Well, Gus and them been rolling. I've been keeping up with him all year.
Yeah.
And he's been rolling. What a phenomenal job he's done out there. And hopefully.
Yeah. They're good. It was a good game. But the other thing I learned, Jeff, and I'm hoping none of them are on the call in case I ever want to get a coaching job again. The officiating stinks no matter where you go.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Let's might as well get into the middle of it. We got time. Which that's something you can't control. And you've been in the SEC, and you've been out, other places. And SEC is you get knocked down a few times, and if you don't get back up, you're going to get left to the wayside.
Yeah.
Which the officials. Most of the time you've ran across them. If you've been around a while, you kind of got a clue that this guy does this or he calls, and you get analytics and all the whole deal. Going into a tournament, especially at first round, seems like do you talk to your players about you got to adjust? Hey, they're calling touch fouls. They're letting us play. How do you get your team prepared and yourself as a coach prepared for that game?
Yeah, I think it's important to have a scouting report on the officials, and like with any other in-game adjustments, you have to adjust to how they're doing it. Like you said, they may do things that you have no control over.
Yeah.
And it might get in a situation like the more you bark about it, the more they're going to do it against you. So, it's not like, and you have to do it because you're emotionally invested and you want to try and fight for your guys. But at the end of the day, they're going to call it like they're going to call it. But you just have to go in there with the idea that first of all, you can't betray who you are as a player, and you can't betray who you are as a team at that stage. Like that would be suicide. So you just got to go out what you got to do. And then the other thing that will happen is, since let's say since January 1st to this past weekend, you've fundamentally had the same officials or the same like different crews, but you've had the same officials now for 3 months.
Yeah.
You're seeing the same dudes night in and night out. And I'm telling you, and you probably see the same thing. And I've never watched this much college basketball because I've never had the time to do it.
Yeah.
But every single night I turn the TV on, whether it's SEC or whatever, I see Terry Oglesby and Doug Shows out there. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
I think Doug Shows was doing the American Athletic Conference finals with UAB and whoever. It's like, dude, go home once in a while. It's like, do you want to be at home? They're all over the place. But now what will happen when you get in the tournament is, you're going to see some officials you may not know.
Yeah.
And I don't think the NCAAs have gotten to the point where they have analytics on officials. But I will tell you this, in the NBA they do.
Oh, yes, they do. Yep.
They know who calls what and why they call it and who they call it against and what to stay away from. So, but you also just have to bring, some maturity and some emotional intelligence to the fray, and make sure that your team, especially if you get down early, that you're not panicking. You make your team panic more than they need to be.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, and you can edit this out, but there's going to be a lot of sphincter clenching early in the tournament, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
The only one that I can see maybe that not having to is like UConn has this swagger about them that I think they might be immune to it, but probably not, frankly. But Houston is going to go into this having just gotten their butts beat by 27. So there's going to be, the seeds of doubt are going to be in there. And if, you get down 8-2 or something, and then you just got, and then all of a sudden you can't breathe.
Yeah.
And you just got to be careful of that stuff. And you got to be, as the head coach in particular, but the coaching staff in general, like you have to guide people out of that, and you have to do it with a maturity that allows you to do that. And particularly if you're with officials that you don't know, because now maybe you come out and you go down 10-2, and then you get mad at a guy who referees in the West Coast Conference, and you don't know him, and you don't know his personality. He doesn't care for you, and all of a sudden, now you're down 12-2, and it's their ball.
Well, and I always wondered that, going into it, because I know you talked about the NBA, but NFL, whatever. The Bill Parcells. One thing I learned from him over the years was he would get every official's name. He knew where they worked, how many kids they were, and and he would go through that with the staff. And this guy's you ain't putting up with this guy. Will talk to you, and that part of it, and it's a little gamesmanship at the end of the day. It is.
But you have time for a little Jim Valvano story?
Yeah.
So, I played small college basketball, and and even in high school where I played, it just seemed like we had the same officials over and over and over and over and over again, right? And it never occurred to me, and I never really paid attention to it. Of course, I grew up, I'm a 1981 graduate, and I think ESPN came online in 1980.
Yeah.
So back in my day, you basically the games you get to watch on television were Sunday afternoons, NBA, and it's always the Bucks, the Bulls, the Lakers, the Celtics, or the Sixers, and that was it. It was like and the Knicks. Yeah. It was like nobody else was even in the league. It'd be some combination of them, right, on Sunday afternoon. So, I never had observed it, never really paid much attention to it. But then when I got to the Atlanta, and then in junior college the same way, and I played NAIA basketball the same way, like same guys over and over. And then when I got to NC State, I thought, there's going to be all kinds of guys, it's got to have a lot of officials. But that wasn't the truth. Like, they were just same dudes over and over and over again. But we were playing, and oddly enough, I think we were playing Vermont. And you could go fact check me on this. I think we beat Vermont 108-58. I'm pretty sure. Like, we beat them by 50, or we might have doubled. It might have been like 102-51. Like, whatever. It was not good for the Catamounts that day in Reynolds Coliseum. But they were grooming a young official, right, to be in the ACC staff. Coach Valvano was unbelievable, man. He was so funny, and he was so witty, and he was so smart. And so, the game's out of hand and in our favor. And so he's just he's in a good mood, and he's got this swagger about him. So he kind of goes up to this guy, free throws. We're shooting free throws, and he kind of sidles up to the guy. He goes, "Hey, you excited about being in the ACC?" He goes, yeah, I'm excited. He goes, yeah, we're glad to have you. He goes, hey, what did they tell you about giving tees? He goes, can you tee me up for what I'm thinking? And he goes, nah. He goes, I don't think I can tee you up for what you're thinking. He goes, well, that's good. He goes, because I think you suck. So the guy goes, bam, he tees him up, and then Coach Valvano's like, putting on a show. Like he just, the crowd was going ballistic. We're up by about 1 million points.
Oh, that's good. And he probably turned around and goes, I didn't do anything. I just
And I was just thinking it. He goes, I didn't say you were terrible. I just told you I think you are.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Oh, man.
He would do things like that all the time, man. Like, he'd just go, wow, is he like, and I was just a baby in the business. Like, I was like Bambi, man. I could barely stand up on my own 2 feet. And, but he would just do things that go like, this isn't normal. Like, this is not normal stuff. But that's why he was who he was. Like, he's, like, he was magical, man. Like, I'll never forget that.
That's good stuff.
I'll never forget that. Where do we leave off?
No, we're going to head down here, Coach. Texas Tech and NC State. NC State comes rolling in the ACC tournament, and Texas Tech, they've made some runs here in the last couple of years, a little bit of the tournament.
Yeah, so here's the thing about NC State. As much, and I don't even know, I guess there was a little karma there. I didn't realize they were next on the list. Huh. So the last time they won the ACC tournament was 1987, a guy by the name of Jim Valvano. He's right there. Okay. That year, not that year, but the year in 83 when they won the ACC, they also won the ACC tournament that year. They would not have gotten into the NCAA tournament had they not won the tournament in 83. But also at that time, there was only 8 teams in the ACC. So it was just a classic quarterfinal tournament. 1 played 8, 2 played 7, 3 played 6, and 4 played 5, and then you just played it out. NC State had to win 5 games in 5 days.
Yeah.
And I do believe there's, people can disagree. I may be completely wrong. I do believe that you can just you can almost get in a trance where you're just doing it and things are going right and you're playing your tails off and you're getting the calls you need to get. You're making the plays you need to get. You're getting the stops you need to get, and everything just kind of falls in line. I don't think it would be as dramatic if you were in a league where you only had to win 3 games to win the championship. Like Auburn did, as an example. But they had to win 5. And I think they were in that mode where it just, like, it seemed like destiny, if you believe in that kind of stuff, and not everybody does, but it just seemed like destiny to me. But then come Monday morning, they had to wake up and they didn't have a game to play. And now they start thinking about it. And I'll start, and I'm sure, like, I know Kerry Keats probably just gave them all Monday off. Like, they probably just, maybe they had massages and ice baths and that sort of thing. And then on Tuesday, and I'm going to look here, NC State, what they got to do, they got to play. They're also playing on Thursday.
Yep.
Okay. So I think that's a factor. And I just think that reality is going to set in for them. And they, we're not great. And it pains me to say this. I hope the heck they win. I got nothing against Grant McCaslin and Texas Tech University, but I've got some ties to this place. But I just don't think I don't think it's going to happen. I think
the emotional toll.
The momentum has gone.
Yeah, well, but in the emotional toll, winning those 5 games and that you've accomplished it, you hate to say it, yeah, everybody says we got momentum, but there's also some complacency that, we
no doubt.
Was a big deal in getting in. All right, this is the next one I want to talk about. And I don't trust this team either, because I think they won't guard anybody, but I think they're going to win this one. It's Kentucky and Oakland. I mean, Kentucky, I've seen them live. I've watched them, and they give up tons of points.
Yes, they do. They do.
And I don't know how you win with that. But they're
going to clobber Oakland just based on sheer talent, and then they're going to get beat by Texas Tech in the next round, in my mind, because Texas Tech is good enough offensively, and they're also good enough defensively that Kentucky's not going to just be able to. I don't think Kentucky's going to roll up a huge number on them. And I don't think they're not simply going to get enough stops to win, in my mind. I actually have Texas Tech going all the way to, like, they're going to win that one, and then they're going to win another one. I've got them getting to the Elite Eight. And that's as a power to the, that's a testament to the Big 12. And obviously, you can be wrong about this, but I have them beating Marquette actually in the Sweet 16. So, but you're right about Kentucky. Like, it's, you keep wondering, like, God, they can't be that bad. And then if you didn't get a chance to watch them on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, and you'd start looking at box scores at the end of the night, you go, good Lord, like, they give up 95 again or 103. And what did they give up to Arkansas? Although they won,
Arkansas scored over. I was sitting there watching that game, and I remember texting somebody going, "Do you believe Arkansas just scored 103 points? I don't know if we scored 103.
Yeah, I was going to say that was 104 or something like that.
It was unbelievable. And they scored quite a bit. And then when they played in Fayetteville, the score wasn't real high, but they missed tons of shots. And nobody shot it real well that night. But every night, they're like you nailed it. They're just, they're trying to get to the other end before they don't even play on that.
Yeah, they're a sieve. I mean, there's no other way to say it. So, and that just, and in this environment, and in any environment, like, you just can't always count on your offense. Like, you just can't count on your offense. Like, some nights it's just not going in. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. And why that is, I don't know. I've been around this game my whole life. I don't know why your offense tends to disappear, but your defense is more about your disposition and your demeanor, and your intent and your aggressiveness, where sometimes you can be overly aggressive on offense and it hurts you. It's hard to be overly aggressive on defense.
Yeah.
You play as aggressively as you need to play to the level and find out how the officials are going to call the game.
Yeah.
And just go knock somebody over and see if that's a foul or not.
Yeah.
Just I don't see them getting too far.
Well, bottom here, we got Florida. Of course, Boise State, Colorado are going to play a little bit. And, of course, you like Marquette, obviously. Talk to us a little bit about Florida a little bit. I mean.
Well, I have Boise State beating Colorado, so then I have Florida beating Boise State in that game. Florida's like they have just come out of nowhere with this guy, and he's done a phenomenal job. And again, like, when you look at his roster, you don't see, like, I think it's a really, really balanced roster. He's got a little bit of everything. He's got some big kids that can play, and he's got some guards that can score. They defend, they move the ball, they run in transition, and they just, I don't think they're spectacular, but they're a tough out in my mind. Like that's the category I'd put them in. They do a lot of good things. They seem to be really mature, and they don't get frazzled by a whole bunch. And so I think they win. They win the game against Boise State, and then I think they're just going to get beat by a better Marquette team. Yeah. Is what's going to happen.
Yeah,
but Florida's good.
The coach done an amazing job. All right, let's go to the Midwest, and this one here is interesting. And I heard this from Jay Williamson on ESPN the other day with Purdue. Now, obviously, you saw Purdue. I saw Purdue live played Arkansas here in a preseason game, and they've got maybe a back-to-back national player of the year.
Yeah, and Edie.
Maybe the third time. And his guy's really never been out of the first or second round. His legacy, which I mean, usually when there's a player of the year, I think Danny Manning back in the day, making long runs, different guys,
Christian Laettner.
Those guys are making runs. Talk to us a little bit. You saw Purdue. Obviously, I think they're going to get out the first round, but what do you see with that bunch?
Well, we woke up here in LA this morning, Jeff. And I was talking to my lovely wife Angie, who and this was odd because I just said, I got to put the finishing touches on this thing I'm going to do with Jeff this afternoon. Like at some point, like Purdue's got to snap out of this.
Yeah.
And she agreed with me. And now we don't know what to do with our marriage because we never agree on anything. So she goes, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I said, we haven't thought the same thing for like 15 years. But I do honestly believe it. Like at some point, they got to bust through that glass ceiling that they've built for themselves.
Yeah.
Like they've had some horrible losses. Oh. I mean, the 116 obviously is like it doesn't get worse than that.
No.
Unless you lost to a team that turned down the NIT bid and somehow got to play them in the NCAA tournament. Like it's just unbelievable to the games they lose. And I don't get it. They've got good players. Matt Painter's a great coach. You clearly can't win at the level that they win at, in that league and not be good. So I really don't know what it is.
Let me ask you something. You hit something right there. And this is just a little bit of the football in me, a little bit here or there, and obviously, but do you think, and you got to recruit for your league, obviously. I mean, if you got to have big people, big physical people. You got to have speed. You got to have this and that. And in basketball, do you think they're so institutionalized in their league, which has always been a really tough league? And then when they get out and play in a Vermont or somebody that's a little awkward or, get up and down a little bit, does that factor in?
Yeah, I think that it can. Although I will tell you this, I grew up in Big Ten country.
Yeah.
Right. And at the time, even though I was born in Nebraska, we moved to Minnesota when I was 5. But I grew up in Big Ten country. I graduated from high school. I was there, watched it every night that I could on the box. And the Big Ten has this reputation of being these big, rugged dudes, which there's some of that, but it's not like when I was a kid growing up. Like what the Big Ten looked like when I was growing up, like it looked like a bunch of lumberjacks out there in short pants.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore. There's great athletes. There's skilled wings, and I think it's a much more balanced thing. But I'll tell you this: like you could actually go back and look this up probably, but like my Minnesota Gophers, and again, this was before ESPN had even started, but he would have Coach Dutcher, which is Brian Dutcher's dad. His name was Jim Dutcher. He'd have like 6-7 footers on the team. A couple of them would never play, but then he'd put a couple of them out there at the same time and go, yeah, it was like watching paint dry, like, holy God, I couldn't keep up with the speed and that sort of thing. But first of all, I think Montana State gets through that first game.
Yeah.
I think Montana State, if you want to talk about your sphincter being clenched up a little bit, I think this is Montana State's 3rd straight year there.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have the big eyes. And they're gonna be going, they're gonna be lurking around in the weeds going, you know what, we can beat them. So I don't think Montana State's coming in there thinking, yeah, let's just take our check and, go home. I don't think that at all. I think they will give them everything. And I actually watched the Montana State-Montana game again. I'm up watching the freaking Big Sky, conference championship game. It was about 1:00 in the morning. I think they were playing in Vegas, and they were down big, and they just started, man, they moved the ball, and they've got one kid who plays fearless, and he can score, and everybody seems to know their roles. I just, like, in my heart, I just have to say, okay, at some point, they're going to get past this, and they're going to win one, and then they're going to win another one. Then they're just going to go. So I actually have them going to the Final Four, honestly.
Well, Virginia, same thing a couple of years ago. They had a good run. They struggled in the tournament. Boom, get beat by sitting 1 or 15 seed or 16 seed. I don't remember. I think it was 16. Then come back the next year and win the national championship. So I mean, sometimes they can get through a game or two. They can go a long ways.
I'm just not ignoring. I'm listening to you, Jeff, but I just got a notification on my phone that says Sean Farnham is predicting. Oh no, I thought it said he's got a number 1 seed losing early in the tournament. I thought it was going to be Purdue. He actually has Carolina losing in the second round.
Wow.
What are you doing, Sean? What is he doing? Yeah. That means they're losing either Mississippi State or Michigan State.
Yeah. I ain't buying in on that, Coach. I'm not an expert.
Well, neither is he. He's not a coach. That's why he's sitting in that pretty suit on the pretty set.
Exactly. All right, let's go down here. We got Utah State and TCU. TCU's had a great year. I really like those guys.
Yeah, I do too. But Utah State won the Mountain West the regular season, and I'm locked in. I think Utah State wins that game. TCU's had an up and down year, like everybody in the Big 12 did, because they were just clobbering each other over the head, every day with a club. And but I think Utah State gets through that. They will not be scared of that game, obviously. I think they win it. And then I've got to get beat by Purdue.
Well, then we got in Salt Lake City, got Gonzaga and McNeese State.
I got McNeese.
That makes me feel better about my bracket, Coach. You're on the same page here, right there. I got McNeese also. They're playing good. Yeah, Gonzaga is nothing. I've watched them a couple of times, stayed up late like you, and I watched them play BYU, and I don't see it what they've had the last few years.
Yeah, I don't either. And that's, I hope to put some food on my family's table someday. I don't have to try and go get a job in the West Coast Conference, but I don't get the whole thing. It was only a couple teams, 3 teams in that league that are probably, that are any good. And I don't think they get tested, and I don't think they're physical enough. And I've not seen McNeese, to be honest with you, but I know they won 30 games.
Yeah.
And I know Will Wade is pretty good at talent acquisition.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing those dudes are pretty good.
Well, and Will Wade's done a great job. I've kind of followed him here, especially in the tournament, kind of watched him, and he's put some talent together, and he knows how to win. He's been there,
Yeah. I think I actually have him winning 2 games, because I'm gonna couch this a little bit, but I have Samford beating Kansas.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. Kansas is seed, and you like Samford. Wow.
Well, for this reason, and I'm gonna if I was a bettor, which I've never bet on the game because it's coaches aren't supposed to do that, but if I was, I would not put my money down on the game till I know if McCullough and Dickinson are playing. And so I may change that before we get there. But as of right now, I read an article this morning that Bill Self said that Dickinson's been practicing, but they hadn't done anything live with him. But McCullough hasn't been doing anything.
Wow.
And so if one or both of those guys can't play again, and Samford can score now. Samford can score. And it's one of those, like what you've described a couple times, Jeff, where like you get out of this unbelievable league, and then no matter how much film you show, and no matter what locker room, what great locker room speeches you have, you're still the dudes from Kansas walking into the gym with some team you don't even know what city they're from. It's the second time they've ever been to the NCAA tournament. You've got more All-Americans on your team this year than they have ever had. And you've got more All-American teams on your team that right now than they've been in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So there is that element. No, you really can't brainwash it out of those guys. So I think if those guys don't play, that Kansas could have some real trouble because Samford can play.
Yeah.
I mean, they move the ball like crazy, and they get up and down, and they can score. And I don't know this guy Bucky, but I do have a friend on the staff there by the name of Mitch Cole, and I know he's a great coach. And while we're here, I'm got to tell you another great story from my past. So when I was I'm glad my mom can't listen to this, but when I finally got my college degree, right? Because I was not an engaged student.
Well, that makes two of us, Coach.
I was big on the social scene,
yeah,
but I wasn't engaged academically so much. But I had fun in college, a lot of it. But when I finally got my degree, I was an 81. I was an 81 high school graduate, and I got my degree in 87. So that just tells you that I got a master's degree in junior college, and I got another master's degree when I got right after my bachelor's, because I put in an extra year on both on the bookends of that. And that's the way I remember it, and that's the way it's going to be. But when I was coming out, I was actually offered several Division I jobs. And one of them was a former assistant at North Carolina State, which if I hadn't been hired at North Carolina State, you could say like you're full of it. But there was a gentleman by the name of Ed McLean who became the head coach at Samford. That opened up a job at NC State. Coach McLean was a retired Marine, and Coach McLean was also Pete Maravich's high school coach.
Wow.
So, but he was the one that ran the camps at NC State. And then when he left, I took over the camps, and Coach McLean offered me a job at Samford. The same summer that I got offered a job at NC State. And had that not come around, I'm pretty sure I would have gone as a graduate assistant to Georgia Tech with Bobby Crimmins, or Bob Valvano, who was Coach Valvano's brother, was the head coach at St. Francis in New York at that time, which is a small Division I in New York. And I honest God, don't know if they've ever made the tournament, but Coach McLean offered me $1,000 a month, and I could sleep above the gymnasium. There was like a little room up there with a bed in it. And then he goes, I can probably get you a job as a fry cook at the burger joint down the street, so you can make a little extra money. That was an honest to God coaching job offer I got when I was coming out of college.
But it's funny, and you bring that up, and I've heard stories like that, through my whole life. If a guy wants to coach, he'll find a way where he wants to be and learn. You sacrifice, those things. I've slept in coaches' offices my whole life, and gymnasiums. That's just part of it. But that is awesome. That part of it.
Yeah. So Coach McLean he's passed, but I always, I always would tell him how much I appreciated his confidence in me, and obviously the NC State thing came through, and I hate to say it this way, but I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to flip burgers, and because that wasn't the way my dreams played out in my head when I wanted to be a college coach. It's like, yeah. Hey, we hit a buzzer beater. Hey, you want cheese on that? You want those onions fried or raw? How do you want them? That was not in the dream. So, but I do appreciate it, and it's fun to see them doing what they're doing, and it's looks like they've changed the building. I don't think that cot's probably up there anymore, and who knows if that burger joint's still there. Who knows if that burger joint is still going or not?
So you coaching this little pod here, you feel like you see Purdue coming out of here.
I see Purdue coming out, and part of why I see Purdue coming out is because I've got those upsets there.
Yeah.
Where I actually have so McNeese and Sanford would match up.
Yeah.
If that happens, then and if Purdue takes care of their business, they're going to be sitting there with at best a 12 or 13 seed to get to the Elite Eight.
Yeah. I see where you're going there. This next game is very interesting to me too. To go into this next spot headed into Pittsburgh, South Carolina and Oregon. I really like this South Carolina team. Watched them live once, and you know they played well. They're a big physical team, good athletes. Like their coach, they'll guard you a little bit. And Oregon, I hadn't seen enough of, and these 1 a.m. games on the West Coast. You can update us on this.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't watching the Pac-12 or whatever in the world it is. I was watching the Mountain West.
Yeah.
But I love South Carolina. I started putting out on social media right after I'd seen I'll give you another NC State tie, but the AD at South Carolina, his name is Ray Tanner.
Yeah.
And Ray was actually at NC State when I was at NC State. And so he and I would go hang out a little bit socially, and he was an assistant coach to a great legendary baseball coach by the name of Sam Esposito. And our offices were right next to each other, and the walls were like paper thin. So we would just knock on the wall at each other, and we would roll our office chairs out in the hallway and just visit for a while to get away from our bosses who were driving us nuts, as you know, as bosses do. So I've stayed close with Ray over the course of time, and so when South Carolina was playing at Arkansas, I was sitting right behind their bench, and I didn't know Lamont Parrish. I still don't know him really. And I just thought he was outstanding.
Yeah.
I think they have as high a degree of composure as any team in the country. I think they close games as intelligently as anybody in the country. And I'm not suggesting it's worked out every single time because they've lost a few games here and there, but they're not a team that beats themselves. Like you're going to have to.
That's what I see, Coach. They and I know it's just, and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They get it together.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what situations, ups and downs, craziness, not getting a call, getting a call, on a run, whatever, they always seem like they've just got it together.
Yeah,
all the time.
I think they get time. I think they get they make timely stops. They hit timely shots. They all seem to be comfortable in their roles. They've got that freshman who's a stud.
Yeah.
And then they've got some older dudes that seem to have play with a combination of a pretty significant chip on their shoulders for some reason, but also composed at the same time. So I actually have them going all the way to the Elite Eight because I think they're going to be more rugged than Creighton because I've got Creighton in the next round. And Oregon, Oregon's one of those, like they just got in by the skin of their teeth. If they don't win the conference tournament, they're not in.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, and part of making that pick for me is that like the Pac-12 was down, like way down. UCLA's terrible. USC's terrible. Arizona State's terrible. And you had to fight your way through the conference tournament just to get in. So that means not that they're terrible necessarily, because I haven't seen them play, to be honest. Like, I don't even know anybody on their team because I wasn't paying attention to them because I didn't expect them to. I wasn't expecting to talk to you about them right now, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they had to win the conference tournament to get in, that means they had to be not very good for several months and put themselves in that position. So I don't see them winning that game. I see South Carolina winning that game. And then I've got Creighton beating Akron, who got in, when the kid made that unbelievable play. Poor kid. I hope he's okay. I hope they're taking care of him, mental health wise, because he's got to just feel terrible. And then I just think that I think the Big East was undervalued a little bit. They probably could have had 4 teams in, maybe even 5. But at the end of the day, I don't know that the Big East. Like the Big East in the current day is as physical as what the SEC is.
Yeah.
This isn't our Big East that if you have younger viewers on there, they have no idea what we're talking about. But those guys,
Hey, Monday nights, baby. I used to love Pat Ewing, Pearl Washington,
Oh
Willie
man.
Bass, all those guys, man. Chris Mullen.
Oh yeah. Walter Berry.
Oh, yeah.
Like they used to knock people out of the sky and the officials just let it go. It was unbelievable.
Well, I think they were the first coach. They went to 6 fouls.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they got their money's worth, you know.
It was unbelievable, man. They were so physical, and I just don't think the Big East plays like that anymore. I think Marquette's pretty physical.
Yeah.
Like now, Creighton runs beautiful offense. I watched them. And Xavier one night. I thought they were going to score 300 points between them. Neither team could guard the other, but man, they were getting good shots for each other, and they pass it, and they're well drilled on the offensive side. I just don't see them getting past that. And then I've got Tennessee beaten. I actually have Texas beating Colorado State. I think Colorado State gets past Virginia, and then I've got Texas beating Colorado State in that. Virginia, to me, just like they can't score.
No, he's never been able to score.
And I'm a defensive guy, so I appreciate their defense. But at some point, like I was tracking their scores once, and they had like a 3-game stretch. They can get above 50.
Yeah.
And I think they won 2 of them. It's like at some point you're not going to win many games scoring 46, 48, 47 points. And I don't think they'll have enough. They're just not going to have enough juice. And Colorado State can score. They've got the all-time program leading scorer there. And it's a Minnesota guy by the name of Nico Medved, who's the head coach there. And I always pull for Nico. And again, they're coming out of that Mountain West. Yeah. And it looked like Colorado State might be the odd one out. But they were able to get in. And again, we got to get that guy on your show, Jeff, because I don't understand how you're in the play-in game, but you're a 10 seed.
That makes no sense. I'm gonna get him on here. And like I know him a little bit. He was the SID where I went to college at. So we've met a few times. Matter of fact, when y'all were playing in Indianapolis, I ran into him. But I need to get him on here. I'm gonna have you on there also. Yeah,
I just don't understand that thinking. Like if it's a play-in game, they should all be 16 seeds because you're saying they weren't good enough to be there. So I've never understood because they used to have them as the 11-16. Yeah. Like it used to be the 11-16 game. But I think Colorado State wins that. I think Texas beats them, and then I think Tennessee beats Texas. And then I've got an SEC Sweet 16 between South Carolina and Tennessee. And then I think South Carolina gets to the Elite Eight.
Well, let me ask you about Tennessee real quick.
Yeah.
And I love Rick Barnes. I mean, and he's always going to have a big team. The Rick Barnes is either going to go a long ways or they're going to go out early. I mean, that's just been his history. And why is that? I mean, you've watched it. I mean, they've had great teams. They don't shoot it well. And then if they get through that first round game, it seems like, man, first weekend, they make a long run all the time.
Yeah.
It's in Texas.
Yeah, somebody was telling me the other day that Tennessee hasn't been past Tennessee hasn't been in the Sweet 16 for 19 years or something like that. Hard to believe, but I don't know. I can tell you this: they were always my scout when I was at Arkansas, and I'd have to go back and look. I think we probably split right down the middle.
Yeah,
usually lost at their place, so they usually lost at ours, and. But man, it was one of those teams where the night before you'd get the night sweats and you go, I don't know if we can beat them.
They're huge.
They're huge. They're skilled. They know their roles. They're well coached. And then, I don't know what the heck happened in the first round of the SEC tournament. They just kind of disappeared again. The kid Connect was not, that probably was the worst game of his season. And the other thing to think about with him, even though he was the SEC Player of the Year, which I agree with, and I think he's going to be, not sure he's going to be a lottery pick, but he's going to be right in that.
Yeah, he's great.
He's going to be right in that 12, 13 to 16 range. He might fall just slightly out of the lottery, but he's going to be right in that range. But unless I'm missing something, he's also never played in an NCAA tournament.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
And he's also never had these kinds of expectations. Not that a regular season SEC game isn't high expectations, but They're a number 2 seed. And when you're a number 2 seed, by the math, if you don't get to the Elite Eight, that's a failure.
Well, let's hit that. And you coached, and we've been through our brackets here a little bit. And I want to ask you a few questions, and I know get you off here. You're busy out in LA. You look at going into it, and you see, you just mentioned it. You're a 2 seed, you're a 1 seed, maybe a 3 in the expectations. Does that weigh on those kids a lot? Or do they most of the time just go play? Or when you're a bottom seed, is it us against the world? Who gives a flip, let it rip and go? I mean, what's the mentality there?
I think first of all, I don't think so. I've been in 4 NCAA tournaments in my life. I've coached in college, like major college, 5 years, 1 being the COVID year. So throw that one out. So I've been in 4 out of 4. And at NC State, my 2 years at the beginning of my college career, and then when I got to Arkansas in 2019, I hadn't been in college for 30 years. So, but we were a 3 and a 5 at NC State, and then we were a 3 and a 4 at Arkansas. First of all, the ones in the late 80s, Jeff, were like, there wasn't nearly the coverage.
Yeah.
Yahoo Sports didn't exist. The Athletic didn't exist. Google didn't exist. Like that stuff, like none of that stuff existed at that time. So my memory is I don't remember. I just don't remember all the chatter about it. There just wasn't that much coverage of it. Like it basically was ESPN and CBS, and now they've got, they play games on True TV and TBS. Oh, yeah. Like I don't even know. It's hard to keep track of almost. But I don't recall a player ever saying anything like, "Oh, we're like," now they do have the mentality of like, we're a 3 seed and we're playing a 14, and all we got to do is, get up and do our daily constitution in the morning and brush our teeth, and we're going to beat them. Like that is real, and you have to fight that. But I've never heard anybody actually say it out loud, and I've never heard them say how much pressure they felt.
Yeah.
Now, there are times so I've been in 4 of those games. And by the way, we were the biggest upset in 1988, the year that Kansas won it, because we would have played Xavier in the second round when a guy by the name of Pete Gillen was there. But we were the 3-14 upset in Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah. And our guys just frankly didn't show up.
Yeah.
And we had fought it all week. They had a longtime pro. His name was Jeff Martin that played. We got beat by Murray State. They were the 14. We were the 3. And we were good, man, like really good. We finished second in the ACC. And that's the good old ACC when the ACC was it.
Yeah.
And all the SEC did was play football.
Isn't it funny as a coach, and you're bringing that up, you could smell it. I always say I could smell it.
Yep.
You know it, and people think there's just a magical button that you're going to hit reset and get everybody focused. It's almost become an individual thing. Each player.
No doubt. When you sniff it out, no doubt you can sniff it out, and you're pulling every trick out of your bag to try and not let it happen. But you'll see it all the time. You'll see where the upsets will happen. I don't know which one of these is going to be an upset, but there's going to be a crazy upset. And it'll come in like one of 2 fashions. One will be like a crazy, last second buzzer beater. And one might just be a really low seed just controls the game from start to finish because your guys aren't ready to go.
Yeah.
Because you'll remember, and I'm trying to think, I get lost on the years sometimes. I forget who was on which team. Was Jalen with us when we played Colgate in Indianapolis? Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Remember we were down 17-4.
I know.
Yeah, and that was my scout, and I thought Musselman was going to fire me before the second media timeout.
Well, talk to us a little bit about this so people get. You're at term. Say you got a Thursday game, all right, first round game, and obviously you're going to play on Saturday. say you win that Thursday, what's the preparation one going in for that possible 2-game getting ready prep wise?
Yeah.
What do you do if you win that day off? You know, what's that look like?
Well, so there's a couple of things. Number one is like typical, like what we would. I'll just tell you what we did at Arkansas. Now at NC State, even though I was just a baby, one of the things that Coach Valvano had found about me was that he thought I had a sense for it. I just kind of had a kind of a innate gift on the preparation part of it. Even though looking back, I don't feel like I had any idea at that point. But I had coached in junior college with my junior college coach, and even though we didn't have much for resources, by that I mean like we didn't have access to stats, we didn't have access to a lot of film, but we dug and we would get as much information as we could. And you'll love this, Jeff, because you might have gone through it. We used to get on the phone.
Oh,
like, I'm talking about a real phone, not a cell phone, because they didn't exist. We would get on the phone and the other coach would try and describe to you what the team you're trying to prepare for was running. And you'd go, wait. So where's the 4-man? Like that's honestly, you would do that.
Yeah. Oh.
So, times have changed so much. So at NC State, I did most of it, and I would bring it to him. And Coach Valvano had this, and then I'll get to modern day here in a second. But Coach Valvano had this. He had like this crazy. It was like it was omniscient in a lot of ways, but he called it. And I talked to people about it in my speeches and stuff and clinics. Jeff is like he called it the anatomy of the game. And what he meant by the anatomy of the game was, and everybody will talk about, like you got it, first five of each half, they're vitally important. The last 5 of the game is vitally important. But in Jim's mind, he would have it like he broke the game down into 8 compartments of 5 minutes. So first 5, second 5, third 5, last 5 of the half, first 5 of the second half, next 5, middle 5, last 5 of the game. And in his mind, after I would give him what I had, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, I have no idea. But he would, in his mind, say, this is where I'm expecting the game to be at the end of the first 5. And this is where I expect the game to be by the end of the second 5. So now you're 10 minutes into the game, right? And then now we're 15 minutes in. And he was, I'm telling you, people don't believe me, and I don't care. But if we weren't where he thought it was supposed to be, he would just abandon the plan and he might just make something up. Like it was incredible. And I'll tell you who can, well, first of all, the guys that played there can vouch for that I had on my team, not my team, on the team. And, so I was there for 2 years and we had 7 guys that played in the NBA off those 2 teams.
Yeah.
We were pretty good.
Yeah.
But we also had, like you could ask Chris Corchiani this, and I don't know if you remember him, but Corch he was the all-time NCAA assist leader when he was done playing. And this will be like this will be breaking news to everybody that's listening to us, is those guys played 4 years at the same school.
Yeah. Shocker.
So we had
do that really?
No, I don't know if you can still do it or not, but
yeah.
But in those days, like it was like a stain on your program if somebody moved on, if they transferred. It was like people, they weren't looking at the kid, they'd look at you and go, what's wrong with your program?
Yeah.
Like why would a kid want to leave here? But anyway, we had Rodney Monroe and Chris Corchiani, who Billy Packer and Vitale and all those guys, they called them the best backcourt in the country. And they were in the same recruiting class. They both played 4 years. And Chris would remember this, and I could probably get him on your show. He's a great dude. He was a great player, great competitor. But we were playing Georgia Tech at home, and they had a kid by the name of Tommy Hammonds. And Tommy was like a 6'9", 245-pound.
Much a man. Man.
Yes, he was so strong and so big, and things were not going. And we were playing him at home, And, and things weren't going well. And during a timeout, Jim just grabbed the board and he just drew up a defense, not an offensive play, but he drew up a defense. He said, listen, and I think Chucky Brown was guarding him, and Chucky's now a head coach at St. Augustine's College in Raleigh, and he's got two daughters that played soccer at the University of Minnesota. Like I still talk to these dudes, man. They're the best. And Jim just said, I think it was Chucky, and he said, Chucky, you just play behind him, and Chris, wherever Tommy goes, I just want you to be in front of him. So basically, we just sandwiched him. Right? Like we just had one in front and one behind. And Tommy got so frustrated that he almost took Chris Corchiani's head off. Like he was like looking at his, like he tried to take him out. And I'm telling you, Corchiani will remember that. But we went on to win that game. But my point is, he had this thing that he would know roughly what the score was going to be. Like way before people talked about pace and like the pace of play and the number of shots you're going to get in the game. Like he just had this, he was so unbelievable for me because you just learned so much from him, just observing him. And he loved to just talk. Like we would just talk about things as a staff. And so when we got to the level of whatever the 5-minute segment was, and it wasn't just the first and last 5 of the half and the first and last 5 of the second half, it was all 8 5-minute compartments. If it wasn't going the way he thought, he would just change.
Wow. And
people talked about him as being one of the premier elite in-game adjust guy, which I believe to be true. I'm a little biased. You might tell I'm pretty fond of the guy. But he also would just he would do stuff that just was, if he did it today, people would go like, what is he doing? Because you'd have every freaking dipshit out there analyzing it, right? From all these different media outlets. But he would just do it because he would just say, listen, if we continue doing what we're doing, this ain't going to work out very well.
Well, and that's smart, Coach, because, we're also about the first 4 minutes starting and then, closing the halves and all that. And I've never, any sports you could implement that in a game.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, he did it in 5s, not 4. Yeah.
It's funny.
In those days, the TV timeouts were at 5, not at 4.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you bring that up, and I've watched documentaries obviously on the 83 team and followed it, and they've done 30 for 30s and all that good stuff. And they were fixing to play Houston. They just got through in 83. You had 5 slamming jamming, Dr. Duncanstein and Louisville just about to rip the goals down back and forth.
Right. No
and everybody was talking to him. He's like, well, we might shoot one shot. It's 4-shot clock, once every 10 minutes. Or he said he goes in the locker room and goes, we ain't doing that. And he said, we're going to run, get up and down the floor, and it's funny how that works.
Like it's actually it was in a press conference. It's so funny too, Jeff. Like when you look at that stuff, like all they had at the press conference was like a blue curtain behind the wall, right? There was no logo. Like it wasn't presented by crypto.com or anything. It's all just generic stuff. You go back and watch when Bobby Knight started tearing up a press conference room. It was just pipe and drape, right? It's just like rip it down. And then there's just a brick wall back there. But Jim, so I think what Jim said to him, he goes, well, what time does the game start? Like 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock Monday evening? He goes, we might take a shot Tuesday at about 10 a.m. That's because the thinking was you can't run with these dudes. They're gonna beat you 100-40.
Yeah.
And then they came out and just go, and honestly, like if you talk to those guys that played for him, Sidney Lowe, Derek Wittenberg, there's a huge thing on Facebook. You could probably go find some, like I chimed in there a little bit, but a huge thing since NC State won the tournament this last weekend. It feels like that 83 moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid it's not going to be. Plus, Kerry Keats isn't Jim Valvano, and I don't even know Kerry Keats. But those guys will talk, and even as a young assistant coach, his pre-games were emotional, and they were incredibly motivational. They weren't canned. It wasn't a skit. It was, and those guys were talking about it. And I felt it even as a coach, like the hair was standing on the back. And now I didn't have any hair on the back of my neck. Now I barely have any hair for a different reason. Then I was too young to have it. Now I'm too old to have it. But like you would just run through a wall for that dude, like literally. And if you talk to any of the players that were there with him, they all say the exact same thing, because we'll get together and sit down. You know, maybe you haven't seen a guy for 5-10 years, and you'll have a couple beer, and you go, one or the other will finally say, "You remember that time?" And then, and then it's just go like, what, like, and in those days, like you weren't supposed to talk about your feelings, right?
Yeah.
But now you go like, didn't you just feel like you could walk on, like you could climb Mount Everest and be back before, breakfast was on the table? Like he was incredible that way.
Wow.
And so I wasn't there, because I remember where I was in '83 too. I was having a few beers with some buddies. The TV was about this big, and there was 20 of us sitting around watching it. So I remember where I was in '83 too, like the exact spot. And I said to myself, I'm gonna work for that dude one day. Like I just fell in love with him right away. And I don't know what happened in practice. I do know the guys that were there would talk about, and you have to keep in mind the emotional intelligence that it takes to like win championships. So they had had to go to a local high school to practice, and there were no balls. Like there were no basketballs. So they had to practice without basketballs.
Can you imagine that happened today, Coach? You imagine that you going somewhere today, and your ops guys got you, John Brown High School or whatever, and wherever, and they show up, there's no basketballs. Oh my God.
I mean, can you imagine some of the coaches today, how bad they would freak out? Not just, they went through a whole practice at the Final Four now. This wasn't like, they weren't in they weren't in Venezuela trying to get ready for an exhibition game. Like this was the Final Four in Albuquerque. But somehow they survived it, and turned out pretty well. So whatever he did in that practice, like whatever he did to keep it flowing, and whatever conversation they had between the Saturday game and the Monday game, where he said, we're just gonna go play.
Yeah.
It turned out not to be a very high scoring event, because neither team could put the ball in the ocean. But early on, it was just like back and forth and back. So the other thing I was going to tell you is, like today, like what we would do at Arkansas is we would just like flip a coin. So like I remember distinctly, Keith Smart and I were watching New Mexico State and Connecticut.
Yeah.
The 12-5 game in Buffalo.
That game.
And
I went to that game early just to watch Danny Hurley, because he's so crazy on the sideline.
Yeah.
I said, this is the only place in America this guy can act like this, not be arrested.
Yeah, and his language is pretty colorful too.
Yeah.
He's got some New Jersey language, but so Keith and I, like, we just flip a coin, but we would clearly, like, you can see the pass, so you'd have some work done on him, and then Keith and I just flipped the coin, and he came up with Connecticut, and like people may not want to hear this, but I don't really care. But like, I go, he got Connecticut and I got New Mexico State, so I figured, all right, like, I got to takes a little pressure off me. I don't have the next game. Well, New Mexico State ends up, or I had Connecticut, and I'm sitting there during the game going, God, I was kind of wanting New Mexico State to win here. It gets me off the hook, and that's what happened. And Keith did a great job getting us ready, and we knew it was going to be a low-scoring affair, and we had to take Teddy Allen. But that's how we did it.
Yeah,
we just flip a coin, and you'd take one or the other, and now you've got staffs that are so big, like they're finding you information, and the film's all ready for you. Like, it never used to be that way. Like, you'd have to go back and do it all yourself, and there wasn't that much information even to get.
Yeah, well, that with your day off, is that a walkthrough day, or is it a walkthrough kind of deal? Keep the leg.
Yeah. The Thursday, Saturday, or the Friday, Sunday. Like, you're not gonna go do much. It's more of a rest and recovery. might not even leave the building. He might just do a walkthrough in the ballroom.
Yeah.
Watch as much film as you can. Again, if you have them, and if you're at a place where you've got the resources to have a sleep expert and you've got a nutritionist, you have to be listening to them, because all that stuff all matters. Now, I'm not suggesting I doubt they have a sleep expert at Longwood.
Right. Well, talk to me. I've never heard this, the sleep expert part. I've heard the nutrition part, because I'm in a different arena where, you got 7 days or whatever, 5
right.
to play, and you kind of build that nutrition part up in the sleep and the rest. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, you're right. Like football, you're playing once a week, basically. Yeah. But in basketball, particularly in the NBA, there'd be like in the NBA, I don't know what the number is now, but like when we were in the NBA, I think we played like 3.28 times per week on average. So basically every other day. But what that would mean is that some weeks you'd play 3 and some weeks you'd play 4. And that's how you'd get to the basically every other day. So on those, particularly on the weeks that you would play the 4, but it all was important. And, back-to-backs, like you hear about this back-to-back in the NBA all the time, like back-to-backs are a beast. And there are certain back-to-backs, like when I was with the Lakers, we would play at home. And then if we had to travel to Portland to play the next night, there was some crazy number, like they hadn't won a game in that, and Denver's the same way. Like we hadn't won a game in that environment for 25 years. No, even the great Laker teams couldn't do that. So you'd have times where you'd play at home and then you got to go to Denver. So now you're losing an hour because you're going from Pacific to Mountain Time. You arrive about 3:30 in the morning. It's a long drive from the airport, which you have to factor all that. So like you have to know that stuff, and you do over the course of time. You have to know that it's not a 20-minute ride from the airport. It's a 45-minute ride from the airport. So now if there's trouble with and all kinds of things happen, Jeff, this, like there'd be times where I remember one time we were on the tarmac after a game and it's the wee hours of the morning. And for whatever reason, they couldn't get the hatch on the plane open to get to the luggage. So now you go. So by the time we figure out that that's a problem, we'd had the players out there way longer than not obviously on the tarmac, like they're in the bus just waiting. And, so then we just go, all right, the player bus has got to go. Support staff's got to stay here. So just all kinds of things that can, like just the dumbest things on earth, like the normal, like people, like this isn't real life in a lot of ways. And I tell people, if you're a person that has a real life job, like you're going, that didn't happen. Yeah, it actually did. Like the dumbest things you've ever thought about in your life. If you can think it could happen in sports. And that, like, it's just like, you just go, are you kidding me? Like, all right, what else is going to happen? Like, like the thumb in the dike, the whole thing, all the fairy tales come true, and, both good and bad. And so the sleep expert would always be the one to tell you, like, what time you have to leave, what time you get them up, what kind of sleep they need in the afternoon. And then in conjunction with the nutritionist, so that they're not eating things that are going to be too heavy.
Yeah.
Keep them up when they should be sleeping. And so the first thing we would do, especially as things got more and more sophisticated during my time in the NBA, is like when the players would walk in, and the players hated this, as you might imagine, but there'd be a person that would meet them at the door and say, tell me about your sleep last night. And some of them would actually wear Apple Watches, so they would take the information off the Apple Watch. But even that they hated. Like they hated sharing all that information. They hated the process of it. They hated that it was every day. Except for the rookies, like the rookies that never played very much, they couldn't wait to share it with you. Like they'd tell you about their bowel movements, and they were just so happy to be there. They couldn't. They were just.
They got a spreadsheet of their sleep. There you go, man.
So like you have to have a sleep expert, and the so like if you're playing on the you're playing say you're in Philadelphia and it's the last, and typically, like, I spent most of my career in the Western Conference. So when you went east, you would typically stay out there for quite a while. Like you might play 7, 8, 9 games, knock them out, so you didn't have to. You're not traveling back and forth the whole time. It's taxing on the human beings, but believe it or not, the owners and the league are actually sensitive to that degree on the expense of it. Like, okay, when you're gone, like go play, get those knocked out. So you typically make like a couple of big trips out east. But now the thinking used to be like, if you played, say you were in Philadelphia and your road trip was over and you got to go home, is that you would like leave right after the game and you'd be flying through the night and you would get home in the wee hours of the morning. So over the course of time, the thinking of that changed. You'd actually stay where you were, get a good night's sleep, and then fly during the day like it's a normal day, because you clearly aren't going from Philadelphia back to LA to play a back-to-back. You're going to have a couple-day window in there. So just those kinds of little nuances changed over the course of time. And it's fascinating, frankly. But the teams that have the most success, as you know, and if you have the resources to do it, you can't leave a stone unturned.
Yeah. Well, and you nailed it. That rest part of it is such a big deal, even in this tournament, guys excited, blah, blah, blah. And I know they got curfews and all that kind of stuff, but there's one thing being playing a game in your room, and there's another thing getting actually good sleep and bad sleep and that part of it. An arrested guy, you just got a little bit more hop in your step and a little more energy than a tired.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. So it's and I'm sure, there's like, you look at your brackets, right? I mean, there's schools all over the place that have different varying budgets and resources. But if you're at a place, like if you're in the SEC, or if you're in the Big Ten, or you're in the ACC, you better be taking advantage of all that stuff.
Yeah.
You better hire the right people, and then you better listen to them.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Coach, I'm going to get you off here. We'll have you back on, or check all your work this week. We're going to put it out there on social media, and I believe this is going to drop Wednesday or early Thursday morning. Coach Cooks is out in Vegas, but he's still working. He's a man of the people, and he's still working. And so
I know he basically just abandoned us.
He did. I think he's working on his golf game. He's an offensive lineman. His has no post skills whatsoever. Probably fills out a bracket and has no idea. But he's a good boy. Oh, he's back right there. Look at him. There he is over talking bad about you, Coach.
Yeah. He's a big dude, too. We better can't be talking behind his back like we just
did. No. But I think I can outrun him, though, Coach, even though I'm 50 years old. I feel quick.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Coach. You're right. I'm not a basketball player, but y'all be getting after it.
Describe your golf game to us. What's the best part of your game?
We can retrieve balls pretty well. We've gained about 15 out in the fringes, which is typically where I land. So
you're my kind of guy.
Yeah, we're a search and rescue kind of pair.
So you not only find the balls, but you're in the areas where the balls are.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's exactly my game right there.
He's left-handed too, Coach, and he's 6'7".
It's a terrible combination.
And the clubs aren't long enough. I was watching earlier. It's bad.
I got rentals today too, so I'm really. That's my excuse here in Vegas.
Where
are you playing? Right? What part of Vegas you in?
Where are we at?
In Henderson.
We're in Henderson.
Henderson.
In Henderson.
All right. Well, have fun. Make sure you load up on sunscreen.
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna get sunburned and find some golf balls.
All righty.
Where are you going to dinner tonight?
I don't know.
To be determined.
Have you been to Javier's in the Wynn?
No.
That's the spot?
Javier's is phenomenal.
All right.
So the best Mexican food, Javier's Mexican, and it'll be great. Like, it's a great environment. And there's a catch restaurant right there too, if you want to. Depends on your budget. But it sounds like you might have some extra golf balls to sell on the street, so you can get.
Yes, yeah. Let me pedal those out. Get some extra bucks. We'll go hit that up tonight.
Well, Clay, I'm gonna get you off here, man. We'll have you on
Okay.
next break.
Thanks. This is fun.
Appreciate you coming on, buddy. See you next week.
Nice meeting you.
All righty.